Well, in the interest of time, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome one and all to today, the only one, a good one. I'm your host, Cassius Stallings. Excited that you're tuning in to another Aspire webinar. We have a great session today. And again, Aspire is a webinar created to inform and empower us financially, physically, mentally, socially, and all those great aspects of health. And so before we get started, we want to take a moment to respect the pause by saying a prayer. And if prayer is something that maybe you're not accustomed to doing, please feel free to mute us at this time and come back and join us in a brief moment. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for today, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity. We ask that you open up our minds and our ears to what it is we're about to receive. We ask that you bless us and continue to guide us and be with us. And it's all in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, again, as I stated, my name is Cassius Stallings. I'm the wellness coordinator with Health Visions Midwest. Joining me also is our director, Sharon Tubbs. Hello, Sharon.
Hello.
Being here. And then we also have two wonderful presenters today. I'll ask them now to introduce themselves and the organizations they're representing.
Good morning, afternoon now. I'm Trina Reiki. I am the lead case manager at the Allen County Health Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheila Curry Campbell. I'm the program director and resource manager at Pilgrim Progress Community Development Corp. Thank you.
All right. And thank you again, you two, for joining us. We're excited to have this conversation. So we titled it Dangers in the Air. Short disclaimer that we're not necessarily talking about the air qualities today, but what we are talking about is some of those things that occur that we're not necessarily seeing all the time. So they're in the air, as in we're not seeing them, but they're happening. And so we're excited to have this conversation. Trina's going to start us off, and she's going to share with us about lead.
Right, let's see if we can do this. So my screen's up now, we're good?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Wonderful. So as Cassius mentioned, and I already mentioned, my name is Trina. I am a lead case manager for the Allen County Health Department. I've been doing this role for about 12 years now. So our primary role is education, helping families with young children and reduce childhood lead exposure. So that's kind of my background. Let's see here. There we go. So lead's been around for a long time. Most of you probably know that. It actually has been said that lead was the fall of the Roman Empire. And so they didn't realize it was dangerous at the time. And it took us many years later before we realized the harmful effects of lead. In the United States, lead paint was regulated or outlawed in 1978. Gas was then phased out and then banned in 1995. And then later there was more regulations for lead in water, which occurred later, much later in 1986. It should be noted that lead can still be used in some gasoline, like for airplanes, excuse me, I'm trying to figure out how to maneuver my screen here. There we go. In aircraft, racing cars, farm equipment, gas can still be used with lead in it for those purposes. So Indiana has just recently, as of earlier this year, gone to universal testing. We used to do more of targeted type testing. I have been advocating and recommending universal testing for a long time. And in a few slides, I'll explain more of why this is recommended. But so starting in January, all children, we're not just focusing those on Medicaid, they have a lead test. The first one should be done between 9 and 13 months, and then the second one done between 21 and 27 months. If a child is not caught in those time frames, then they should be tested just as quickly as possible. Really the only way that we know if a child is being exposed to lead is through a lead test. And unfortunately, the test is just captured in that moment of time. So if we don't capture them at that time, that lead level could be increasing and we don't know about it, or it could be going down and we don't know about it. So there's really nothing obvious about lead exposure. That's the problem. It's not like a broken bone where we see, oh, there's an issue, we need to go to the doctor. But sometimes parents can see developmental delays. I see a lot of speech delay, maybe difficulty learning and retaining information. It can also cause some irritability, aggressiveness, and really increases the risk of ADHD behaviors. So it's real important to know if a child is being exposed. I should also note that, well, I'll mention it in a minute here. So these, even though we are doing universal testing, there are still some high-risk groups that we tend to see more often. Children under the age of 7 are highly susceptible. This is due to their bodies absorbing lead more readily. They also have a lot of hand-to-mouth behavior. So I know Cassius mentioned the air and the quality and things in our air that cause harm. Lead actually is more dangerous through the mouth for kids. They can be exposed through the air, but that is not typically how it occurs or how those high lead levels occur. Children living in pre-1978 housing are also at high risk, and Fort Wayne has a very high number of old homes. As you can see, probably when you drive around downtown area, we have some beautiful homes, but there is still lead paint there. We also see high levels in immigrants and refugees. Those countries don't regulate lead like we do. They're different occupations and just standards are not the same as ours. So we do see children coming from other countries often have high lead levels when they arrive. And then obviously the children from lower income families are sometimes renting older homes, and these homes can cause an issue for them. So the only way we know if a child has lead is from a test. There are two primary types of tests that we look at. One is a capillary and one is a venous. The capillary test is just a finger prick. A lot of doctors do this as a screening tool, and it meets those requirements for testing. So they're easy to do. They can be done in the doctor's office. A lot of times the doctor will know that day whether or not the lead is high. The problem with these capillary tests is they're not very accurate. For instance, I had a capillary lead screen recently that came back at 30, which is a really high lead level. But when they went to get the venous test done, which we call a confirmatory test, that lead level was actually 0. So sometimes we see that it kind of gets parents really worried and worked up, and then we find out there's not an issue at all. So I see why they do capillaries. They're not my favorite test. Testing means they also need to be confirmed. So if a child gets that capillary done, and it's high, then they have to go to a lab and get the venous draw done anyway. So sometimes it just means an extra poke. The venous is the gold standard, so to speak. It has to be done in a lab. We typically will get those results in 3 to 4 days. It is a little bit more invasive, but it is an accurate, true reading of a child's lead level. I will note, and a lot of parents think, they have the capillary done and they get the venous and they say their lead test has gone down because the venous is typically lower. You cannot compare those two results. So if a child has a venous result, that child needs to continue to be tested through blood draws in order to compare those results. Let me see, I was trying to think if I missed something. I was going to mention this. My brain is going fast. So yeah, they would need a lab order to get that venous test. And like I said, that's the gold standard, the confirmatory. Oh, I was going to mention the health department gets all lead test results. So anytime a child is tested, they are sent to us from the state. And if the levels fall within certain ranges, then there are some steps that we take, which I'll talk about in a moment. Actually, I guess I'll talk about it now. So we follow up on all test results for capillaries 3.5 and higher. If the venous is 5 or higher, we will follow up on those as well. So in regards to the capillary test, we get notified. What we do then is follow up with the family to ensure that the doctor has ordered the venous test be done. Sometimes we'll have to make calls, we'll send letters, we'll send scripts, we'll help with transportation if needed, whatever we need to do to get that confirmatory result. We do not do home-based services or really any services based on that capillary result. We want to have the venous done so we have the most accurate level. So if we get a venous lead test at 5 or higher, we will contact the family. We will go out and do a home visit. This is for any child under the age of 7. So when we go out to the home, we use a machine, kind of like the picture on my screen. We use that machine to tell us if there's any lead paint in the home. And we know that day, whether something is lead or not. We spend about an hour and a half, 2 hours of visiting the family and giving that information and just education. While we're there, we also do a nutritional assessment. We screen for developmental delays. We will make referrals to First Steps or to the community schools or other therapy providers if we are concerned about any delays at all. And then we also will follow the family to follow up on lead testing and kind of just assist as needed with lead and with other things sometimes. But a child, the recommendation now is for the child to have 2 lead tests under 5 before we stop monitoring. So sometimes I can be with a family for a year or 2 years before we close out that file. And the state just changed that 2 under 5 to in October of 2022. So that was a recent change as well. So most of the time people will just assume that a child has lead in their body because of lead paint. And that's a lot of times what we do see, a lot of exposure to lead dust in the home. Not necessarily that they're eating paint chips, but just there can be a lot of dust from the windows and from the porches. And when children play on the ground or they look out the window, they touch that lead dust and then their hands get in their mouths. And so they're exposed that way. We also sometimes concerned about water. We don't know what kind of pipes are under the houses, and especially in some of these old houses. The city pipes are good, the main line, but sometimes that water sits under the house for several hours and then it can leach into the water supply. So in those situations, we tell families to run their cold water for a while, kind of flush out those lines to reduce that exposure. Dirt is another source of exposure. If you're just walking in it, playing outside, not a big deal, but sometimes we see the kids like to eat it or have their toys in it and then put that in their mouth. So that would be a concern as well. Imported ceramics, mostly when we visit families, people using bean pots or dishes that are kind of ornate, a lot of times from South America. Lead can be in the glaze, and so it can leach into the food supply if they are storing food in them, cooking food in them. They're fine for decorative pieces, but we recommend not using them for food storage. Spices can also contain lead. Some hobbies, fishing, hunting, refurbishing furniture, those types of things. We've seen cases that result in high lead levels from those types of hobbies. Also, employment. If we have families that do construction and they're not aware of lead safe work practices, we've seen parents, scraping paint, those types of things, and then they bring home the dust on their clothes. Law enforcement, car repair, mechanics, those types of people can also bring lead home on their clothing. And then when the kids touch it or put their faces on it, that lead can be ingested. Keys, keychains, batteries. Obviously, a lot of people don't let their kids chew on these types of things, but they are also a source of lead. And then finally, ethnic products and home remedies. Things like kajol that they put on their eyes, Afghan refugees, or even Thanica, the powdery stuff that you could sometimes see on Burmese. Those have also been tested and had lead in them. So, like I said, most of the time it's a paint issue or a dust issue, but it's not always, and sometimes it's a combination of all of these things. So as I mentioned a little bit ago, I've kind of seen the need for universal testing being in this role for a while. These are 4 kids that I have worked with over the past few years. And I don't think that they may have been tested if we only tested based on risk. So the first one we had was a 4-year-old. They lived in a newer home. They didn't go to any daycares or any grandparents' homes or anything, but their lead level was 14. But in this situation, the dad had gone to an antique shop here in town, found some really neat doors that he liked, but they had chipping paint on them. He sanded those doors down in the garage. They were repainted, but when he sanded, he created a huge mess of dust. And it turned out it had lead paint on those doors. So he actually had another child as well. They both had high lead levels until we figured out what was going on in the home. Another child that I worked with got this National Guard keychain at a local fair that they had went to. Mom let her play with it, chewed on it kind of when she was at the grocery store, things like that. We just give our kids our keys to keep them occupied. They lived in a mobile home. We could not find any source of lead except for this keychain. Once mom removed the keychain and didn't allow any access to it, we did see her lead level go down drastically and pretty quickly. And then the next one has a picture of the race car. As I mentioned, race cars can still use leaded gasoline. So in this case, dad was a race car driver. They would work in the garage a lot. The kids were out there. He'd have the baby out there in the garage with them, playing on the floor, those types of things. So no other sources could be found. And we believe that it was likely that car gasoline that was exposing that child. And then the last one here, I had a 3-year-old that was shot with a bullet. It was a stray bullet, but it went through his buttocks. And when it did that, those fragments kind of just went everywhere. He did have a surgery to remove some of those fragments, but some of them were just ingrained in the tissue and would not be able to be fully removed. So his lead level did go down. The last I had heard it was around 20, but his level will probably stay elevated for many years. So these are just all kind of different things that maybe people don't think about when they think about lead. Their mind goes to paint. And so it is important to test all children in hopes that maybe we catch some of these that don't have the typical exposure. So when a child has lead in their bodies, there's really nothing that we can do about the past. Nothing we can do to get the lead out any faster. Typically, there's not any medication or any treatment, which is sometimes frustrating for parents. They want to give them something and make it go away. We can't change the past, I guess, so to speak. Our goal when meeting with a family is to prevent ongoing exposure and to minimize the exposure as much as possible. So these are the things that we recommend when we visit with them. Hand washing, just if there is any lead dust on the floors or on the windowsills, porches, things like that, if they are frequently washing their hands, the more likely they're going to have that dust removed for when they do put their hands in their mouth. Reduce mouthing behaviors altogether. So again, that hand to mouth behavior, keeping their toys clean. If they take a pacifier or a bottle, we want them to keep those clean as much as possible. When I meet with families, I just tell them, I know it's hard, especially when they're little, but anything that goes to the mouth, if it's not food, could potentially be a hazard just because of the dust. We also encourage nutrition. We want them to have a lot of vitamin C and iron and calcium. when their bodies are full of these nutrients, their body is less likely to absorb the lead. So we really encourage a high diet, high healthy diet, and also frequently eating throughout the day so that their nutrition levels stay elevated. Cleaning, again, this kind of goes back to the lead dust. Windows are a huge concern for us. Porches are another big concern for us. And so when parents are opening and closing those windows, it creates a lot of friction, sometimes dust, and then that can blow into the house. So we encourage them to keep the floors clean, swept and mopped, also window ledges and sills, taking shoes off when they come into the home. Those can all help prevent that dust from being spread around. Abatement and remediation is the ideal solution. Sometimes this is difficult because there's not a lot of people that are trained to work with lead, so it's hard to find a contractor to do the work. It's also expensive because they have to take so many precautions. So it can be a struggle for both landlords and for families. The thing with lead paint, though, if it's covered and sealed with new paint, it's not considered a hazard anymore. So sometimes that's the easiest and cheapest solution. It's just something that has to be maintained. So if we see a porch that's chipping really bad, they could paint it, they could put some outdoor carpet down, anything to seal that lead up would help take care of that. Even windows, if they don't open them, and the window ledges are painted really well, there's no way for that lead to, I don't know, come out, I guess, so to speak, and it would really reduce their hazard. So we work with the families in the home, show them specific ways that they could try to minimize that exposure if remediation or the complete removal of lead is not possible. And then the last thing is chelation. This is a medication that's given in the hospital. This is typically only done when a child's lead level is 45 or higher. I probably get one, maybe two of these a year, thankfully, because it is kind of a difficult process. A lot of times the child has to be hospitalized. They can't go back to the home that they live in until things get fixed. So that's the most invasive. We hope by taking some of these other steps, we prevent the chelation from having to occur. So those are just a few tips that we give to families when we go out. I'm providing this slide. As I mentioned, the remediation of lead is costly, and sometimes it's just a lot for a family or for a landlord. But the state does have a grant available through IHCDA. They will fix the house at no cost to the family at all. They have some general requirements, which I've listed here. Dave Pugh is at the state. He would be the main contact. If a family is interested in applying, he would do all of that process. The local health departments are not involved in this particular grant. So I would not be the best person to ask about it, but definitely if you have families that you know of, whether they are a renter or whether they're a homeowner, I would definitely reach out to them. They are looking for homes to fix. So it's just some general things that I hear when I meet with families or when I meet with people in the community. So I just kind of wanted to touch base on them. Sometimes a parent doesn't think that they need to have their kids tested because they have had other kids and those kids were never high. I encourage all children to get tested, as I've mentioned several times. The condition of the house when one child is 2 and the condition of the home when the children in the future are age 2 can be very different. So paint can be more deteriorated, or there could be other things in their environment. It also depends on the child's behaviors. I've had twins where one of them is high and one of them is not, but the one may put their hands in their mouth more often or have more of that hand to mouth behavior. So we definitely recommend all kids to be tested. Sometimes when I reach out to families, they are not very receptive. I think most of that revolves around fear. They think if we come to their home and we see lead, they're going to have to move or their home is going to be condemned, and neither of those are true. I always tell a family that knowing where the lead is much better than moving or staying in a home where you don't know. At least if you know where it is, you can take precautions to make the home safe. So if that is a concern that you hear, please know that we do not move families because of lead. The only time, and this is a little caveat, is if a child is being chelated, they cannot stay in a home with lead during chelation. It's just really dangerous for them. So that would be the only time that we tell them they cannot stay in their house. Some people still believe that kids are eating lead paint and that's how they are exposed. Yes, they do have lead paint in their body, but it's unlikely that they're eating it. If they are eating paint chips, their lead levels will be super high. And that's when we start looking at those chelations. Most of the time, lead levels range, most of my cases are between 5 and 12. And those are likely from lead dust or some of the other sources. My kid doesn't act sick. She doesn't have any delays. She wouldn't have any lead. As I mentioned earlier, you may not really notice any impacts of lead. They may act fine, they may look fine, see no indicators, but that just does not mean that exposure is not occurring. The only way we really know is to have that testing done. And we don't want the lead exposure to continue. We're just going to see that will continue to impact that brain development and the learning and growing. So we want to minimize the exposure as much as possible. And then obviously some people still can't believe that lead is even an issue. When I meet people and I tell them what I do, they don't understand how I can stay busy because there's surely not that much lead paint, but there is. Which goes onto my next slide, just to kind of give you an idea of my caseload right now. I have 78 confirmed lead cases. So that means I am working with 78 families that have children with lead levels above 5. Those are ongoing cases where we've done home visits and we continue to monitor them. I currently have 62 non-confirmed cases, which means they've had that capillary done. It's high, and we're trying to get the venous done in order to see what services we can or need to provide. This also kind of just gives a breakdown of my cases based on race. And as you can kind of see, it's pretty across the board, pretty equally broken up. I have families from all different backgrounds that I work with. This again gives you an idea of screening in Indiana. Indiana hasn't released their data for 2022, but in 2021 in Indiana, 66,000 plus kids were screened for lead. And then in Allen County, 3,789 kids were screened. Screening does not mean they had lead. That means they went to the doctor and had the capillary done as a screen or potentially the venous. So that doesn't necessarily mean that many children were high. It just means that they were screened. Obviously, the universal testing, we're hoping to increase some of those screening rates. The more kids we screen, the more likely we will see more kids. So this last screen gives you an idea of our team. There's actually 3 of us that go out to a home when we visit. It's always myself. I'm always the first point of contact for a family. We have our own risk assessor. That means she's the one that does the testing on the home, and then Phil assist with that lead testing as well. And I've listed my phone number and my email. So if you come across people that have any questions, they are welcome to call or email me directly. And I think that is the end of my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Trina. That was very informative. We really appreciate finding out that information. Before we move on to our next presentation, we want to ask, does there anyone have any questions for Trina and her presentation? Allow a few moments.
I have one. Trina, you had mentioned that with the capillary test, sometimes it shows like a higher positive than maybe what's the case. Does it ever show like a false negative? Or maybe they would do that test, it doesn't show a high lead concentration, but then if they did the venous, it'd be different.
Yeah, most of the time they are different. Typically, the venous will be lower. If the hands don't get washed well or the doctor's machines aren't properly clean, there can just be some cross-contamination. So that's why I tell parents, don't get too worried with the capillary. Let's get the venous done, and then we'll know from there what to do, because very rarely do they match up.
And there was a question in the chat. If there's a high level on lead, do you make a report to DCS?
We do not make any reports to DCS unless a child, that chelation is kind of like an emergency number. So if a child needed to be chelated and the family would not respond to us or maintain contact, then we may make some referrals. But just for the lead issue alone, would not be a referral to DCS. And even if they had to be, I should make that a cut, even if they have to be chelated, that would still not be a referral, only if we can't contact them and we don't know about the safety or the health of the child.
Another question was asked, can we have a copy of those slides? So do you care if we share those slides?
Sure, no problem.
All right, yes, we'll send that out after this call. Okay, all right, in the interest of time, if there's any other questions that are addressing to Trina, please drop them in the chat. If not, we will allow Ms. Sheila to present now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trina.
I think I'm off mute. The introduction, thank you so much for creating this space for us. Full disclosure, I am a member of the board of directors of Health Vision. I serve as the treasurer / secretary. So kudos to the team. Just want to talk about Midwest Building Decarbonization. I also sit on that board of directors as the vice president. And so we have a coalition here in Fort Wayne. We meet the first Friday of each month at Pilgrim Baptist Church, located at 1331 Gay Street. So that meeting is open to the public. We meet from 10 to 12. We provide light snacks. So please come and join us on the first Tuesday of the month. Next slide, please. Awesome. So I just want to talk about the work that we do. Our work is surrounded by equity as the center of our coalition. Our coalition here in Fort Wayne, we have about 56 folks that's come to a meeting once or more. We have an average of 25 attendees. And so equity is what we base our work on. And so holding ourselves and others and another accountable to inclusion in the society of which all can participate. And so what we try to do is to educate individuals about equitable buildings and decarbonization, and to move the hazards of fossil fuels usage in buildings and facilitate access to carbon-free heating, water heating, and cooking. And so our priority is the BIPOC community, and we're very intentional on the work that we do. And so being equitable is the outcomes that we're looking for, and who benefits from decarbonization, and also the leadership and the enterprise and communities, how this impact the burden of energy and environmental injustice. Next slide. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to skip through a lot of this, but we would love for you to join us in our coalition. So you can go to our website. If you're not familiar, if you're a member of the coalition, I see quite a few folks here today that are a part of the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. And so who we are is basically, we're the Midwest Building Decarbonization, and we were founded in 2020. We play a leadership role in conveying stakeholders and allies around the regional decarbonization strategies. So our Midwest BDC, it's advancing. It's the first of its kind. It's equity first, and it's a coalition model with regional and specific theory of change. And so now is the time. We're asking folks to join our coalition. And so our mission is pretty cut and dry, is to develop, implement equitable strategies and to achieve zero emissions from the Midwest building sector by 2050. A lot of folks ask, what is decarbonization? It's pretty simple to us, but not to others. And so it's energy efficiency plus electrification plus carbon-free energy generation. And so that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to do this with folks like you. And so I'm always looking for those worker bees, folks that's already doing the work in their community. And so what we do is we connect individuals. We represent a mix of local, state, regional, and national organizations, from local environmental and climate justice advocates to national recognized green teams. This diversity is vital in fostering the ecosystem of collaboration and the ability to learn from experts in all facets of this work. So we have active participants from each of the 8 states in our region. So that's Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And so the Midwest covers a large space, and we're here in this space. And thank you once again for creating this, Mr. Stallings. Next slide. So what I'm here to talk about is indoor air quality, basically. And so gas stoves is one of the things that we've been talking about a lot. You've probably seen it in the news. And so when the blue flame fires up on a gas stove, there's more than heat coming off the burner. So researchers at Stanford University found out that among the pollutants emitted from stoves is benzene, which is linked to cancer. Levels of benzenes can reach higher than those found in secondhand tobacco smoke, and the benzene pollutions can spread throughout a home, according to the research. So the findings add to the growing body of scientific evidence is showing that emissions within a home are more harmful than gas stove owners have ever been led to believe. And it comes as stoves have been dragged into the country's ongoing culture wars. So on the nightly news, I think at one point you probably heard all of this stuff. So with one burner on high or the oven at 350 degrees, the researchers found that benzene levels in a house can be worse than the average level for a secondhand tobacco smoker. So this research is real. Next slide, please. So one of the things we found while we were doing this research is that good ventilation helps. It reduces pollutants and concentrations, but we found that exhaust fans were often ineffective at eliminating benzene exposure. And so what we know is that this paper analyzed the benzene emissions when a stove or an oven is in use. Researchers also tested whether cooking food, pan frying, salmon or bacon emits benzene, but found all the pollution came from the gas and not the food. That's important because the gas industry often deflects concerns about pollution from its fuel to breathing problems that can be triggered by cooking fumes. There are no studies out there that says cooking with gas will make someone sick. This is all about increasing risk for certain illness. So Stanford Sciences, they measured the benzene from gas stoves in 87 California and Colorado homes in 2022. So that's recent. So this paper has been published. You can Google it, you can find it. What they found out was both natural gas and propane stoves emitted detectable and repeatable levels of benzene that in some homes raised indoor benzene concentration above well-established health benchmarks. So you can see in the illustration there, this is a Stanford researcher in Bakersfield, California. He operated a benzene analyzer in the back of an electric vehicle. Go figure. They used the electric vehicle because the pollution from a gas exhaust contains benzene, which could alter the results. Next slide, please. So what can we do? You know, we know what the problem is, so let's talk about solutions. What can we do? Well, we know number one, replacing a stove is expensive. Though there are cheaper solutions. You can buy a portable induction cooktop. You can plug in appliances such as a toaster oven that can reduce the amount of time necessary to use a gas stove. And when the time comes to replace your stove, there are now government subsidies available through the Climate Focused Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year. So nonprofit groups like Rewiring America, they put out a guide. So you can Google that again. Like I said, I don't want to take up another time. I know we're running a little late here, but gas utilities, they have long researched how gas stoves pollute indoor air and even develop new styles of burners that use less gas, emit less nitrogen dioxide, but manufacturers don't use them. They're saying that they're more expensive, harder to clean, and consumers are demanding them. But if you're worried about pollution from cooking with gas stove, there are some things you can do. The most obvious is to stop cooking with gas and switch to electric. There's a campaign underway to encourage people to do that, both for health and climate reasons. The main ingredient in natural gas is methane, which leaks into atmospheres along the gas supply chain and is potent. It's a greenhouse gas. Next slide. So here at Midwest BDC, we have several standing committees and subgroups, and one of them is our health committee. And so a lot of the work that we do is advocacy. We're always reaching out to our elected officials and our legislators. And so the clean energy transition and the inflection point in the Midwest states are paving way to a clean energy future. So renewable energy is cheap. It's cheaper than burning fossil fuels, and the federal support under President Biden's clean energy law is driving more investments in wind and solar resources than ever. And so gas stoves, they've been all over the news. Like I say, I'm sure you guys have seen something on MSNBC or NPR, you've seen all of this stuff. And so what they know is this research that was published back in December of 2022, it attributed 12.7% of childhood asthma in the United States to gas stoves use. Just think about that for a minute. You know, a whirlwind of media coverage followed from NPR, Architectural Digest, as folks jumped into the conversation that was quickly becoming polarizing, politicized, and focused on the possibility of banning gas stoves. You know, you think about this, and people go to one extreme to another. So this became a point of contention. People basically getting out there, latching onto that God, guns, and gas stoves. It was actually tweeted by a representative out of Ohio. It was in response to an article, and he wanted to assure readers that no one was coming for their guns, you know, and no one's coming for their gas stoves. I mean, they actually had T-shirts. I mean, this was just something that just went to big extremes. But what we do know is in Minnesota and Illinois, recently legislation shifted their power sector 100% carbon-free electricity in the next few decades. So Governor Whitmer over in Michigan, he issued an executive order to make the states carbon neutral by 2050. And the state legislators is considering increasing the renewable portfolio, their portfolio. So think about that. Indiana, you need to be listening. But our grid here in Indiana, we're behind the curve. Threatening to hold up the clean energy transition is limit the benefits. Cleaner air to breed new jobs, cheaper power. That's what the Midwest is looking for. We're counting on our elected officials to do this. The Midwest grid operates, it's a heavy and lengthy process. We know there's a to-do list that aligns the grid with clean energy future, and we cannot afford to continue at a snail's pace. Delay in transmission and planning and interconnection impedes the integrity of renewable resources that can help customers save money and keep the grid reliable. Next slide, please. As I stated, the Midwest BDC, our health committee is out of this world. And I want to give those folks a shout out, because that health working group has been in doing the work. And so when the request for information came out, the consumer protection, these folks they send this information out, but they don't give you a lot of time. So on March 7th, a formal request for information was posted by the CPSC with a response due by May 8th. So it's not like they give you a lot of time to do this work. So this request for information, it was to seek input from the public on chronic chemical hazards from gas ranges. Chemical hazards results in acute, short-term, or chronic, or long-term adverse health outcomes resulting from exposure to chemical substance. So this RFI does not constitute or propose regulatory action, but rather it is intended to inform the commission and the public. And so those folks in that working group, in the months leading up to this request for information, the health working group had to work to proactively and collaboratively create a health talking points and resource list. Resources they knew that would come in handy in situations exactly like this one. In this case, the group only had 2 meetings across 60 days to coordinate the response to this whopping 27 question posed in this request for information. Thanks to their preparation, the Midwest BDC Health Working Group was able to discuss, draft, and submit detailed comments that were co-signed by other Midwestern organizations and individuals working to make our homes and buildings healthier for all. Next slide, please. So our evidence-based comments, the Midwest BDC Health Working Group, they submitted the comments that outlined the facts about the indoor air quality, pollutants produced by gas stoves, and the effectiveness of ventilation, and the health impacts for those living in homes with them, relying heavily on assessments conducted by the federal agencies and the finding of peer reviewing studies. Based on the scientific evidence, we voiced our support for CPSC investigation of solutions to mitigate the health risks posed by gas stoves. Our recommendations included mandatory standards for the cellar range hoods alongside gas ranges, building codes or other local or state laws or regulations for exhaust hoods, internally and externally vented, above or near gas ranges, and the creation of education material for consumers, including warning labels. We need to give a shout out and a kudos to the Midwest Health, because these folks, that health working group is outstanding. Nearly 9,000 comments were submitted. The CPSC on this topic, our health working group members felt it was important that their hard work on these comments in the Midwestern perspective were not buried amongst all the others. So we sought out support from across the region before submitting the multitude and the reputable organizations backed our comments, representing diverse interests including public health, medicine, clean air, climate energy, consumer safety, environmental and racial justice, housing, law, faith, and more. For some of these groups, this was the first introduction to the Midwest BDC Health Working Group. We are always grateful to add more perspective to this work. We know that we're stronger together. Thank you to all of the 33 organizations who signed on to these comments. You can read the entire Midwest BDC finals. If you go to our website, Midwest BDC, you will find that report. Next slide, please. The last thing I want to bring to our knowledge is what we found is very much surprising to most people. About 2/3 of Americans say they worry about global warming and support policies to reduce it, but most do not realize that their views are so widely shared. What we found is that vast majorities of Americans underestimate just how many of their fellow Americans support these transformative climate policies, like a carbon tax or a Green New Deal or a 100% renewable energy mandate. These were words that were spoke by Greg Spartzman. He's the assistant professor in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Boston College. What they found is the vast majority of Americans underestimate just how many of them and their fellow Americans support this policy. We have gone before City Council here in Fort Wayne to ask for a grassroots climate action plan. We asked those folks, and the mayor did on Earth Day, produced a climate action plan. So our grassroots organizing has done a lot of advocacy work here in Allen County. And we know that we're stronger together and more people care about policies that can heal our earth than you might think. There was over 6,000 Americans that estimated the percentage of other Americans who worry about climate change and support climate policy. They compared those numbers with polling data from Yale and George Mason University. Why actually supporters of climate policy outcomes, opponents 2-1, we see that Americans think it's the other way around. The misrepresentation matters. When people feel alone in their views, they are less likely to take action. So it's important to start conversations about climate change, to voice your concerns about climate change to others, to talk about climate policies that you think that are exciting. These kinds of conversations, when done in masses, it will help correct this misperception. End of report. I know we've only got a few minutes and I want to allow for some questions. So thank you, Mr. Stallings, for creating this space, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for sharing that. If there's any questions for Ms. Sheila, please feel free to ask them or to drop them in the chat.
Sheila, I want to thank you and Trina for that amazing, both of those amazing presentations. I know that I learned quite a bit from both of them. I did not know about the stove thing. I think maybe I'm way behind everybody else, but I didn't know about those gas stoves. So that was some great and new information, and Trina, as well, about the various ways that our children can ingest lead through ceramics and water and all of those things. So those were very, very informative. So I thank you both for those. I see that there are some questions coming in through the chat there now.
Yes, yeah, a really good question. I kind of had this question too. Is cooking outside with a propane stove safer than cooking inside?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Confirm. Right on. And then the other question was, are there programs to help pay or to add solar panels to homes?
Yes, there are. There are several programs. Matter of fact, our speaker this month is Jaleesa Moldine. She's with Faith in Place. They help with faith-based organizations. I think on the last slide, I do have my contact information, but it's SheilaRCC@yahoo.com. So yes, there's a lot of funding opportunities with the EPA, Department of Energy. So yes.
All right, excellent.
And Sheila, what were you talking about at the very end with regard to City Council and some of the efforts that you're going through there? If you can kind of reiterate that, and it sounded like there was a call to action, but is there a call to action here?
There is a call to action, and what we're trying to do is to ask the city of Fort Wayne to support a grassroots equity commission. The grassroots equity commission would be made of 2 to 3 individuals from our quality of life area. Health is one of them, so we would love for a representation from Health Vision, education, health, housing, transportation. What that would be is an oversight of funding that comes into the city and to the county, for us to have oversight and be able to send opportunities, grant opportunities, funding opportunities, making sure that these funds are being distributed equitably across the city of Fort Wayne. So that is a grassroots equity commission. I need you all to sign on, please, and thank you.
Well, we would love to learn more about that commission and find out, some specifics about the expectations of that commission and just how it would impact our greater community. So thank you for that information, and we will definitely be looking into that.
Thank
Cassius,
you.
are there any
Hi,
more
Miss.
questions that are out there?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
hi,
so we
Miss
stopped
Sheila.
on-
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for that great, unbelievable presentation. Just a quick question. How do you convince grandma who's been cooking under fire for all of her life that her food tastes great under fire versus the electrical stove? How do you sell that to grandma?
Well, money is a motivator for a lot of people. So if we can show grandma that she's going to get a rebate, not immediately. Those are some of the things that we're trying to work on with writing some of these other grants and proposals where we can get other organizations to offset that $478 rebate that she's going to get, that she might have to pay upfront to replace that stove. And so if we could get grandma a new stove, bright, new, pretty, I think she'll be on board. Thank you, sir.
I don't
Great.
know about that, Sheila.
Grandma ain't doing a lot of cooking anyway. She's
Idea.
in the microwave.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
I do have a couple of announcements. If there's no other questions, I do have a couple of slides I would love to share with you folks.
Yes, please.
Sheila, before that, I'm sorry, Cassius, I did want to ask a couple of questions for Trina, just to clarify for the lead. Trina, if you could take yourself off mute, but I did want
Thank
to just clarify that the health department is offering those tests.
You mean the blood test or the house testing?
The lead, yeah,
Yes.
the capillary, the venous, yes.
Yep, if they come to the health department, they're gonna get a venous lead test, and that is
Okay.
only by appointment only. Sometimes we don't have, well, not sometimes, we never have weekend hours, so sometimes it's easier for families to go to the local labs because they can go on Saturdays, or I don't know about Sundays. So sometimes that's a recommendation first, just for ease. But yes, they can come to the health department as well, Monday through Friday.
And are there any stipulations on that in terms of do they have to not have a doctor or be on, have insurance or Medicaid or anything like that?
Nope, all they need to do is just call for an appointment. We bill Medicaid. If they don't have any insurance, I believe it's a $25 fee if there's no insurance.
And that is for children under 3 or?
No, anyone can get tested, but we
Okay.
provide our services to 7 and under. So if a 10-year-old comes with a high lead level, we probably won't go out and necessarily visit them, but we could do just some phone education.
But you could do the testing
Yes.
for a 10-year-old. Okay, all right. Awesome. Thank you so much again, ladies. And
Thank you for
Cassius,
having
I'm
us.
gonna turn it over. Oh, there's another question. Are there tests available for grownups?
Yep, they'll test them as well, especially pregnant moms. Sometimes we recommend they be tested. So yeah, absolutely.
When it comes
Okay.
to testing the home, do you guys only come out after lead levels have been shown in the person? Okay.
Correct. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a reactive program. But when we get a result of 5 or higher, we will do the full testing. If a parent calls me and they have a lower level, I will still go and provide education. We just don't do the in-depth testing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Felicia, if you want to share those announcements for Sheila, and then we'll end there.
Awesome. Climate Justice 101, you can learn more and you can get registered at midwestdecarb.org/calendar. Join Marnice Jackson. She's our Midwest BDC co-director, and this will be a live training on Zoom on Thursday, August the 3rd at 12 p.m. Eastern time. I think most of us are on Eastern time. Next slide. Orientation. We offer orientation twice a month during the afternoon and evening. We try to accommodate as many people as possible. So if these times don't work for you, just reach out and we can figure out something. We can get you registered for one of our upcoming orientations. So that's next slide, July the 25th from 1 p.m. to 2, and then Wednesday, July the 26th from 6:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Once again, you go register at Midwestern dcarb.org/orientation. Next slide. All right, talk a little bit about money. Right now, we have applications for participation stipends and empowerment grants. They're open for individuals and organizations working toward equitable building decarbonization. That deadline is August the 1st. And so once again, go to midwestdcarb.org/funding. And I think that's it. The next slide has my information. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me, please, and thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again, Trina and Sheila, for presenting today. Very informative, again, super helpful for us. And all that information that Sheila just gave to us, along with Trina's PowerPoint, we will send out to those who are on the call today. And I think that is all, folks. So thank you so much for tuning in to Aspire. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.